Dreams and Rejections. Introduction to Marcus Ellis. Marcus Ellis sat in his small, cluttered apartment, surrounded by canvases, paintbrushes, and tubes of paint. The room, though modest, was filled with the energy of his creations. His paintings adorned every wall, each one a vivid expression of his thoughts, emotions, and experiences. Art wasn't just a passion for Marcus, it was his voice, his way of processing the challenges of life and celebrating the beauty of his community. Growing up in a disadvantaged neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, Marcus had faced more than his share of struggles. His mother, Gloria, was a single parent who worked tirelessly as a nurse to support Marcus and his younger sister, Tasha. Money was always tight, and their neighborhood, though vibrant with culture and community, was plagued by systemic neglect. Marcus discovered his love for art at an early age. As a child, he would spend hours drawing on scrap paper and cardboard boxes, creating worlds that were far removed from the harsh realities of his surroundings. His art teachers quickly noticed his talent, often singling him out as someone with extraordinary potential. But Marcus's dreams went beyond school art classes. He wanted to see his work displayed in galleries, admired by people from all walks of life. His art was deeply personal, reflecting the resilience and spirit of his community. One painting, titled Resilience in the Shadows, depicted a child standing under a broken streetlight, the faint glow of hope in their eyes. Another, Urban Symphony, was a vibrant explosion of colors, capturing the rhythm and energy of city life. Marcus wanted to show the world the beauty in struggle, the hope in despair. But breaking into the exclusive art world was no small feat, especially for someone like Marcus. The industry, dominated by wealthy, predominantly white gatekeepers, had little room for voices like his. Yet Marcus remained determined, convinced that his work would one day find its audience. First encounters with racism in art. Marcus's journey into the professional art world began with endless submissions to galleries. Armed with a carefully curated portfolio, he sent his work to every gallery he could find, believing that his talent would speak for itself. But the responses, if he even received any, were often dismissive or vague. "Your work is not aligned with our current vision," one gallery wrote. "We appreciate your submission, but are unable to move forward at this time," said another. The few times Marcus was invited to meet with gallery representatives, the encounters were far from encouraging. He would arrive, nervous but hopeful, only to be met with condescending smiles and thinly veiled prejudice. His art, they said, was too urban or lacked sophistication. Some even suggested that he consider a different career path altogether. One particularly disheartening meeting was with a gallery in the downtown area. Marcus had prepared meticulously, bringing his best pieces and rehearsing his pitch. But the gallery owner barely glanced at his work before saying, "Your art is interesting, but it's not what our clientele is looking for. Maybe try local street fairs? You might find an audience there." The comment stung, but Marcus refused to give up. Each rejection only fueled his determination to succeed. He continued to paint, pouring his frustration and hope onto the canvas. His pieces became bolder, more vivid, each one a defiant statement that he would not be silenced. Meeting Howard Livingston. Marcus's persistence eventually led him to the Livingston Gallery, one of the most prestigious art spaces in the city. Owned by Howard Livingston, the gallery was known for showcasing established artists and occasionally launching the careers of new talent. Marcus saw this as a golden opportunity, a chance to finally break through the barriers that had held him back. He submitted his portfolio and was surprised to receive an invitation to present his work in person. For days, Marcus prepared, selecting his most powerful pieces and rehearsing his explanations for each one. He wanted to make an impression, to show Howard that his art was worthy of a place in the gallery. When the day arrived, Marcus stepped into the Livingston Gallery with a mix of excitement and nerves. The space was immaculate, with pristine white walls and spotlights illuminating the artwork on display. Other artists were already setting up their pieces, each one exuding confidence and polish. Howard Livingston entered the room with an air of authority, his presence commanding attention. Tall and impeccably dressed, with silver-streaked hair and a sharp gaze, he exuded wealth and privilege. As he made his way through the room, critiquing each artist's work with a mix of charm and condescension, Marcus prepared himself for his turn. When Howard finally stopped in front of Marcus's display, he studied the paintings in silence. Marcus took a deep breath and began to explain. "These pieces reflect the resilience and beauty of marginalized communities," he said, pointing to resilience in the shadows. "This one, for example, captures the hope that exists even in the darkest moments." Howard raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Hope in the shadows? That's poetic," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "But tell me, who is your audience? Because I'm struggling to see who would buy this." Marcus hesitated, caught off guard. "I believe art should speak to everyone," he said. "It's about connection and shared humanity." Howard chuckled, shaking his head. "Art that speaks to everyone doesn't sell, Mr. Ellis. Collectors want sophistication, not sentimentality. This," he gestured at Marcus's paintings, "isn't art. It's decoration. And not even the kind people would pay for." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. The other artists and gallery staff looked on, some with pity, others with amusement. Marcus felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment, but he refused to let Howard see his pain. "Thank you for your feedback," he said, his voice steady, despite the lump in his throat. Howard smirked again. "Good luck, kid. You'll need it." As Marcus packed up his paintings and left the gallery, his mind raced with a mix of emotions, anger, humiliation, and determination. Howard's words echoed in his ears, but they didn't break him. If anything, they strengthened his resolve. "This isn't the end," Marcus muttered to himself as he walked down the street. "It's just the beginning." That night, Marcus returned to his studio and began a new painting. The canvas, blank and full of potential, seemed to challenge him to keep going. And Marcus, ever resilient, picked up his brush and answered. The catalyst of change. A small but powerful opportunity. The community art show was a modest event held in the heart of Marcus's neighborhood. Organized by local activists and artists, the show was meant to provide a platform for creative voices that had been ignored by the mainstream art world. The venue was a repurposed warehouse, its walls lined with mismatched lighting and makeshift display panels. The smell of fresh paint lingered in the air, mingling with the aroma of coffee and pastries from a corner refreshment stand. For Marcus, the event was a chance to start anew. After his humiliating experience at the Livingston Gallery, he had retreated to his studio, channeling his emotions into his art. But the sting of Howard Livingston's dismissal still lingered, making Marcus question whether his work truly belonged in the art world. The community art show offered a lower-stakes environment, free from the judgment of high-profile critics and gallery owners. Marcus spent days selecting the pieces he would showcase, ultimately deciding on a mix of older works and new ones that reflected his recent experiences. One of the standout pieces was Shattered Truths, an abstract depiction of fractured glass, symbolizing the vulnerability and strength found in moments of rejection. Another was Echoes of Hope, a vibrant painting that blended the chaotic energy of the city with glimmers of light breaking through the darkness. On the day of the show, Marcus arrived early, setting up his display with care. He couldn't afford professional stands or elaborate framing, but he arranged his pieces thoughtfully, letting the art speak for itself. Other artists, many of whom he knew from the neighborhood, greeted him warmly, sharing their own stories of struggle and perseverance. As the doors opened and attendees began to trickle in, Marcus felt a familiar mix of excitement and anxiety. He watched as people browsed the displays, some pausing briefly to admire his work, before moving on. Though the audience was smaller and less affluent than at the Livingston Gallery, Marcus felt a sense of belonging he hadn't experienced in those pristine, white-walled spaces. Meeting Emily Carter. Toward the middle of the event, a woman entered the warehouse who immediately stood out from the crowd. She was elegantly dressed in a tailored beige coat, her salt and pepper hair swept into a loose bun. Her eyes, sharp and discerning, scanned the room with a quiet intensity. Marcus didn't recognize her at first, but her presence seemed to command attention. The woman made her way through the exhibits, pausing occasionally to speak with artists or admire their work. When she reached Marcus's corner, she stopped abruptly, her gaze locking onto Shattered Truths. She stepped closer, her expression a mix of curiosity and admiration. "This is extraordinary," she said softly, more to herself than to anyone else. Marcus, caught off guard, hesitated before responding. "Thank you," he said, his voice tinged with nervousness. "It's one of my more personal pieces." The woman turned to him, extending her hand. "Emily Carter," she said. "And you are?" "Marcus Ellis," he replied, shaking her hand. "It's an honor to meet you." The name Emily Carter rang a bell. Marcus vaguely remembered reading about her, a renowned art collector and philanthropist with a reputation for discovering and supporting emerging talent. She was known for her discerning eye and her commitment to promoting artists whose voices challenged the status quo. Emily studied Marcus's display, her eyes lingering on each piece. "Your work has a depth that's rare," she said. "It tells a story. A powerful one." Marcus felt a surge of gratitude. "That means a lot to me," he said. "Most people don't seem to see that." Emily's gaze sharpened. "Well, most people don't know what they're looking at. But I do. I'd like to purchase these 3 pieces," she said, pointing to Shattered Truths, Echoes of Hope, and Resilience Rising. Marcus blinked, barely able to process what he'd just heard. "You want to buy them?" "Absolutely," Emily said matter-of-factly. "And I'd also like to introduce your work to some influential people. Your talent deserves to be seen." The transaction was quick, but its impact was profound. Emily handed Marcus her business card before leaving, her parting words echoing in his mind. "Expect to hear from me soon, Marcus. This is just the beginning." The role of social media. True to her word, Emily didn't just admire Marcus's work, she became its advocate. The day after the show, she posted photos of his paintings on her Instagram account, which boasted over 2 million followers, many of them prominent figures in the art world. The post was simple yet powerful. "Discovered an extraordinary artist, Marcus Ellis, at a local community show. His work is raw, emotional, and deeply moving. This is the kind of art that changes perspectives. #MarcusEllisArt, #Art That Matters." The response was immediate. Within hours, the post had garnered thousands of likes and comments. Art collectors, critics, and enthusiasts from around the world praised Marcus's work, sharing their own interpretations and expressing a deep connection to his themes. Influential art blogs picked up the story, dubbing Marcus a rising star and the voice of a new generation. Marcus's phone buzzed constantly with notifications. Collectors reached out to inquire about purchasing his pieces, and journalists requested interviews. For the first time, Marcus felt the tide turning. The art world, which had once seemed impenetrable, was finally beginning to recognize his value. But it wasn't just the recognition that mattered to Marcus, it was the stories people shared in response to his art. A woman from New York wrote to him, saying that Echoes of Hope had reminded her of her own journey through hardship. A young artist from Brazil messaged him, saying that his work had inspired her to keep creating despite the odds. Emily's post also caught the attention of prominent figures in the art world, including gallery owners who had previously dismissed Marcus. Offers began pouring in, many of them accompanied by apologies for overlooking his talent. For Marcus, the experience was both exhilarating and overwhelming. He sought Emily's guidance on how to navigate this newfound attention, and she introduced him to her network of collectors, curators, and fellow artists. Each connection brought new opportunities, and Marcus found himself invited to showcase his work at prestigious art fairs and exhibitions. In the span of a few weeks, Marcus went from being an unknown artist struggling to find his place to a rising star with a growing following. The community art show had been the catalyst, but it was Emily's belief in his talent, and her willingness to share it with the world, that had truly changed his trajectory. As Marcus sat in his studio one evening, reflecting on the whirlwind of events, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had faced rejection, humiliation, and doubt, but he had never stopped believing in the power of his art. And now, for the first time, the world was starting to believe in it too. The road to success. Breaking into the mainstream. The ripple effects of Emily Carter's advocacy for Marcus Ellis were more profound than anyone could have imagined. Within days of her viral Instagram post, Marcus's inbox was inundated with inquiries from art enthusiasts, collectors, and gallery representatives. What had once seemed like an impenetrable fortress, the exclusive art world, was now opening its gates to him. For Marcus, the shift was as exhilarating as it was surreal. Invitations began pouring in. One of the first came from the organizers of the prestigious Chicago International Art Fair, a sprawling event that featured some of the most celebrated artists and galleries in the world. The email, sent by the fair's director, Karen Walker, was direct and enthusiastic. "Marcus, your work is extraordinary. We'd be honored to have you showcase at our Emerging Voices Pavilion. The world needs to see what you've created." Marcus read the email several times, scarcely believing it was real. The Chicago International Art Fair had been a dream he'd never dared to articulate, and now it was within his grasp. With Emily's encouragement, he accepted the invitation and began preparing. The weeks leading up to the fair were a whirlwind of activity. Marcus worked tirelessly in his studio, creating new pieces that built on the themes of resilience, identity, and hope that had become his signature. One painting, titled Reconstruction, depicted jagged, interwoven lines coming together in a burst of color, symbolizing the power of rebuilding after being broken. Another, Inheritance of Dreams, honored his late father, a jazz musician, by blending abstract imagery with rhythmic patterns that evoked the energy of a jazz solo. When the day of the fair arrived, Marcus was both nervous and excited. His booth, though modest compared to the larger galleries, quickly became a focal point. Visitors were drawn to the vibrancy and emotion in his work, lingering to discuss the stories behind each piece. Marcus spoke with confidence and passion, sharing not just the art but the experiences that had shaped it. Critics took notice. By the second day of the fair, Marcus's work was being discussed in glowing terms by major publications. Artscene magazine called him a revolutionary voice in abstract art, while the Chicago Tribune praised his ability to blend personal narratives with universal themes, creating pieces that resonate deeply with viewers. For Marcus, the most meaningful feedback came from the attendees themselves. A young woman approached him in tears after viewing Reconstruction. "This piece, it feels like my life," she said. "Like all the broken pieces are finally coming together." Moments like these reminded Marcus why he had fought so hard to share his art with the world. His work wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about connection, healing, and transformation. A new ally. Amid his rising success, Marcus realized he needed help navigating the complexities of the art world. While his passion for creating was boundless, the business side of art, contracts, negotiations, logistics, was unfamiliar territory. Emily Carter, always supportive, introduced him to Robert Hayes, a professional art agent known for representing socially conscious artists. Robert was in his late 40s, with a sharp wit and an even sharper eye for talent. When he first visited Marcus's studio, he spent an hour simply absorbing the art, asking thoughtful questions about the stories behind each piece. By the time he turned to Marcus, his mind was made up. "You have something extraordinary here," Robert said. "Your art speaks to people in ways most can't. But to protect your vision and your values, you need someone who knows this industry inside out. That's where I come in." Marcus hesitated. He had always been wary of the art world's power dynamics, afraid of losing control over his work. But Robert's approach was different. He emphasized collaboration and transparency, assuring Marcus that his voice would remain at the forefront. "Let me handle the logistics," Robert said. "You focus on creating." The partnership proved invaluable. Robert took over the administrative side of Marcus's burgeoning career, ensuring that contracts were fair, schedules were manageable, and opportunities aligned with Marcus's principles. With Robert's guidance, Marcus secured spots in several more high-profile exhibitions, including one at the Whitney Biennial in New York. Robert also helped Marcus establish his brand, emphasizing the authenticity and emotional depth that set him apart. "You're not just an artist, Marcus," Robert said during one of their meetings. "You're a storyteller. And people are drawn to that." Rejecting Howard's offer. As Marcus's star continued to rise, word of his success reached even the corners of the art world that had once dismissed him, including Howard Livingston's gallery. Marcus was surprised when he received an email from Livingston Gallery, but his surprise turned to bemusement as he read it. "Dear Mr. Ellis, we have been closely following your incredible success and are deeply impressed by your work. We believe that your art aligns perfectly with our gallery's vision, and we would be honored to host a solo exhibition featuring your pieces. Please let us know how we can collaborate to make this a reality." The email, signed by Howard himself, was almost laughable in its irony. This was the same man who had publicly mocked Marcus's work, dismissing it as unsellable. Now, with the gallery struggling to stay afloat in an industry that was rapidly evolving, Howard was reaching out to the very artist he had humiliated. Marcus forwarded the email to Robert with a single line, "Thoughts?" Robert's reply was swift. "This isn't about the money or the exposure, Marcus. You don't need him. The best response is silence or success." Though tempted to respond with a sharp rebuke, Marcus ultimately chose not to engage. He declined the offer through Robert, opting instead to work with galleries that shared his commitment to inclusivity and diversity. The decision felt liberating, a clear declaration that he was no longer at the mercy of people like Howard Livingston. Instead, Marcus focused on supporting emerging artists who faced the same barriers he once had. He began mentoring young creatives, offering advice and encouragement to help them navigate the challenges of the art world. Through these efforts, Marcus ensured that his success wasn't just personal, it was part of a broader movement toward equity and representation. A defining moment. Marcus's rise to success was about more than proving his critics wrong, it was about reshaping the narrative. His art, once dismissed and ridiculed, was now celebrated on some of the world's biggest stages. And while the recognition was gratifying, Marcus remained grounded, always remembering the community that had nurtured him and the resilience that had brought him this far. One evening, as he prepared for an upcoming exhibition, Marcus reflected on the journey that had led him here. The rejection letters, the dismissive comments, the humiliation at the Livingston Gallery, they were all part of the story. And in the end, they had only made his triumph sweeter, turning the tables. Discovering an opportunity. Marcus Ellis's rise to fame came with unexpected revelations, one of which concerned Howard Livingston's gallery. As Marcus gained prominence in the art world, whispers about the decline of the once prestigious Livingston Gallery began to circulate. It was no secret that Howard's outdated approach to art curation and his dismissive attitude toward diversity were beginning to take their toll. The gallery, once a beacon for elite art collectors, was struggling to stay relevant. Collectors were turning to more progressive spaces that celebrated inclusivity and innovation, while critics lambasted Howard for failing to adapt to the changing landscape of the art world. Negative reviews painted the Livingston Gallery as a relic of the past, a cold, lifeless space that no longer resonated with contemporary audiences. Marcus first learned of the gallery's troubles from his agent, Robert Hayes, during one of their regular strategy meetings. Robert slid a folder across the table, its contents a detailed financial report on the Livingston Gallery. "It's on the brink of bankruptcy," Robert said, leaning back in his chair. "Howard's losing clients, money, and credibility. The gallery's value has plummeted." Marcus opened the folder, scanning the documents with a mix of curiosity and satisfaction. The man who had once mocked him, who had belittled his talent and dismissed his vision, was now facing the consequences of his arrogance. Robert watched Marcus carefully. "I thought you'd want to know. The gallery's up for sale, and from what I hear, Howard's desperate. He's willing to let it go for a fraction of its worth." Marcus closed the folder, his mind racing. The idea of owning the very gallery that had once rejected him was almost poetic. But this wasn't about revenge, it was about opportunity. The Livingston Gallery had the potential to become something far greater than what Howard had made it, a space that celebrated underrepresented voices and fostered meaningful connections between artists and audiences. "I want to buy it," Marcus said finally, his voice steady. "But not directly. Use a proxy. I don't want Howard to know it's me, at least not yet." Robert raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "A bold move, Marcus. But I think it's the right one." The secret acquisition. The process of acquiring the Livingston Gallery was swift and strategic. Robert enlisted the help of a trusted intermediary to handle the negotiations, ensuring that Marcus's involvement remained hidden. Howard, desperate to cut his losses, was eager to sell and agreed to the terms without much resistance. When the deal closed, Marcus felt a mix of triumph and responsibility. Standing in the empty gallery for the first time as its owner, he was struck by the weight of what he had achieved. This space, once a symbol of exclusion and elitism, was now his to transform. "This isn't just about me," Marcus said to Robert, who stood beside him. "It's about what this place can represent. A new beginning, for the gallery and for the artists who will showcase here." Rebranding the gallery. The transformation of the Livingston Gallery into Ellis Contemporary was nothing short of revolutionary. Marcus envisioned the gallery as a vibrant, inclusive space where artists from all backgrounds could share their stories and connect with audiences. Every decision, from the architectural redesign to the programming, reflected this vision. Marcus hired a team of architects and designers to revamp the space. Gone were the sterile white walls and impersonal atmosphere. In their place came warm, inviting tones and interactive elements that encouraged visitors to engage with the art. The gallery's layout was reimagined to create a sense of flow, with open spaces that allowed for dialogue and connection. The centerpiece of the redesign was a large, open gallery room with a communal seating area, where visitors could sit, reflect, and discuss the works on display. Marcus wanted the gallery to feel like a community hub, not an intimidating fortress of exclusivity. In addition to the physical transformation, Marcus redefined the gallery's mission. Ellis Contemporary would be dedicated to showcasing underrepresented artists, those who had been overlooked or dismissed by the traditional art world. The gallery would also host workshops, mentorship programs, and artist residencies, providing opportunities for emerging talent to grow and thrive. The inaugural exhibit, titled Breaking Barriers, featured a mix of Marcus's work and pieces by artists from diverse backgrounds. Each artwork told a story of resilience, identity, and transformation, reflecting the gallery's new ethos. Marcus personally curated the collection, ensuring that every piece resonated with the theme of empowerment. As word of the gallery's transformation spread, excitement grew. Critics who had once dismissed the Livingston Gallery now praised Ellis Contemporary as a groundbreaking addition to the art world. Collectors, curators, and art enthusiasts eagerly awaited the grand reopening. A new beginning. The night of the reopening was a spectacle of creativity and community. The gallery buzzed with energy as guests from all walks of life, artists, collectors, critics, and community members, filled the space. The walls, adorned with vibrant and thought-provoking art, seemed to pulse with life. Marcus stood near the entrance, greeting guests with a mix of pride and humility. He wore a tailored black suit, a subtle nod to his newfound success, but his focus remained on the art and the people it brought together. As the evening unfolded, Marcus delivered a speech that left a lasting impression on everyone in attendance. "This gallery is more than a space for art," he said, his voice steady and full of conviction. "It's a space for stories, for connection, and for change. It's a place where every voice matters and every story is celebrated. This is what art can do. It can bring us together, challenge us, and inspire us to see the world differently." The crowd erupted in applause, their admiration evident. For Marcus, the moment was about more than personal triumph. It was about creating a legacy. And though Howard Livingston wasn't present that night, his absence spoke volumes. The gallery that had once been his was now a symbol of everything he had failed to embrace: progress, diversity, and the transformative power of art. Marcus Ellis had not only reclaimed the space that had rejected him, he had redefined it, transforming it into a beacon of hope and possibility. And in doing so, he proved that resilience, vision, and authenticity could triumph over even the most entrenched barriers. A night to remember. The grand reopening. The night of the grand reopening of Ellis Contemporary was unlike anything the city's art scene had ever witnessed. Word of the transformation of the former Livingston Gallery had spread far and wide, igniting curiosity and anticipation among collectors, critics, and community members alike. Invitations to the event had been meticulously designed, featuring a stunning piece of Marcus Ellis's art as the backdrop, paired with the tagline, "A New Vision. A New Voice." By 6 p.m., the gallery was alive with energy. Guests dressed in everything from formal evening attire to casual, eclectic outfits that reflected the diverse mix of attendees. The air buzzed with chatter and laughter as people poured into the newly renovated space, eager to see the transformation for themselves. Inside, the gallery was a masterpiece in its own right. The warm, earthy tones of the walls complemented the vibrant pieces on display, creating an atmosphere that was both inviting and inspiring. Strategically placed lighting illuminated each artwork, drawing viewers into the stories they told. The focal point of the exhibit was a massive, floor-to-ceiling painting titled Phoenix Rising, a bold, fiery abstract that symbolized rebirth and resilience. Marcus had ensured that the evening wasn't just about art, it was about community. A local jazz quartet played soulful melodies in one corner of the gallery, while catering stations offered an array of food and drinks sourced from local businesses. The atmosphere was electric yet grounded, a perfect reflection of Marcus's vision for the space. As Marcus walked through the crowd, greeting guests and answering questions about the art, he couldn't help but feel a profound sense of accomplishment. This wasn't just the reopening of a gallery, it was the culmination of years of struggle, perseverance, and vision. For the first time, Marcus felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. Howard Schock. Among the sea of guests that evening was a figure who stood out, not because of his presence, but because of what he represented. Howard Livingston arrived fashionably late, his tailored suit and polished demeanor a stark contrast to the warmth and vibrancy of the event. He had received an invitation to the reopening, though the center's identity had been intentionally left vague. Curiosity, and perhaps a hint of desperation, had compelled him to attend. As Howard stepped into the gallery, he was immediately struck by how unrecognizable it was. The cold, minimalist space he had once presided over was now alive with color, energy, and a sense of purpose he couldn't quite place. He wandered through the exhibits, his sharp eyes scanning the art on the walls. When he reached the centerpiece, Phoenix Rising, he froze. Something about the piece felt familiar. As he read the accompanying description, his face paled. The painting was by Marcus Ellis. Howard's heart sank as realization dawned. He moved through the gallery, his eyes darting from one piece to the next. Nearly every wall featured Marcus's work or the work of artists he had mentored. The entire event seemed to revolve around the very person Howard had once mocked and dismissed. Howard's humiliation deepened when he overheard snippets of conversation among the guests. Marcus Ellis has done something incredible here. This gallery is groundbreaking. His story is so inspiring. From rejection to revolutionizing the art world, it's poetic, really. As Howard pieced together the truth, he spotted Marcus across the room. Dressed in a sleek black suit, Marcus exuded confidence and charisma as he spoke with a group of attendees. Their eyes met briefly, and Marcus's expression remained calm, almost serene. Howard, however, felt a wave of shame wash over him. The gallery he had built, and lost, was now a monument to everything he had failed to value. Powerful statement. As the evening reached its peak, Marcus stepped onto a small stage in the center of the gallery. The crowd quieted, their attention turning to the man who had made the night possible. Marcus held the microphone with steady hands, his voice clear and resonant as he began to speak. "Good evening, everyone," he said, his gaze sweeping over the audience. "Thank you for being here tonight. This moment, this space, means more to me than I can put into words." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle before continuing. A few years ago, I stood in this very gallery, feeling small and invisible. I was told that my work wasn't good enough, that my stories didn't matter. But I want to tell you something, art is not about fitting into someone else's mold. It's about breaking free, about challenging perspectives and igniting change. The audience erupted into applause, but Marcus raised a hand, signaling for quiet. Tonight is not just about me. It's about every artist who has ever been told they don't belong. It's about creating spaces where all voices are heard, where all stories are celebrated. That's what Ellis Contemporary is about. Marcus's voice grew stronger as he spoke. Art has the power to heal, to connect, to transform. And this gallery will be a place where that power is harnessed for good. It will be a platform for underrepresented artists, a bridge between communities, and a beacon of hope for anyone who has ever felt like their voice didn't matter. As he finished, the crowd erupted into a standing ovation. Tears streamed down the faces of some attendees, moved by the sincerity and passion of Marcus's words. In that moment, Marcus knew he had not only reclaimed the gallery, he had redefined it. Howard's reaction. Howard stood at the back of the crowd, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Marcus's speech had struck a chord, forcing Howard to confront the reality of his own failures. The gallery he had once ruled with arrogance and prejudice was now thriving under the leadership of someone he had underestimated and dismissed. As the applause died down, Howard made his way toward Marcus. The two men stood face to face for the first time since that fateful encounter years ago. "Marcus," Howard began, his voice hesitant. This is incredible. What you've done here, it's remarkable." Marcus studied him for a moment before replying, his tone measured but firm. "Thank you, Howard. I hope tonight has given you a new perspective." Howard nodded, his eyes downcast. "It has. I was wrong about you, about a lot of things. I let my own biases blind me to your talent. And for that, I'm sorry." Marcus considered Howard's words, sensing the sincerity behind them. "It's not about me, Howard. It's about the artists who will come through this space, who will have opportunities because we've created something different here. That's what matters." Howard nodded again, a flicker of humility crossing his face. "You're right. And I hope you know how much I regret the way I treated you." As Howard turned to leave, Marcus felt a sense of closure. The man who had once tried to diminish him was now walking away, humbled and irrelevant in the face of Marcus's triumph. A night to remember. The reopening of Ellis Contemporary was not just a celebration, it was a statement. It marked the beginning of a new chapter for the gallery and for the art world as a whole. Marcus Ellis had taken a space that once symbolized exclusion and turned it into a beacon of inclusivity, resilience, and transformation. As the night drew to a close, Marcus stood in front of Phoenix Rising, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. He thought about the rejection, the humiliation, and the determination that had fueled his rise. And he thought about the countless artists whose voices would now be heard because of the space he had created. In that moment, Marcus knew that this was only the beginning. The world was finally ready to hear his story, and the stories of so many others. Together, they would create a legacy that would last for generations. A legacy of empowerment. Building a movement. With the success of Ellis Contemporary firmly established, Marcus Ellis set his sights on an even greater mission, creating opportunities for young artists who, like him, had faced systemic barriers and lacked access to the resources and networks necessary to succeed. Marcus wanted the gallery to be more than just a space to display art, it needed to be a force for lasting change in the art world. Marcus established the Ellis Arts Initiative, a comprehensive program designed to support underrepresented and emerging artists. The initiative had three main pillars: mentorship, scholarships, and artist residencies. Each pillar reflected Marcus's belief that talent needed to be nurtured, and that systemic barriers could be dismantled with the right support. Mentorship Program. Marcus personally led the mentorship program, working closely with young artists from diverse backgrounds. He held workshops at the gallery, teaching not only technical skills but also how to navigate the often challenging art industry. The program emphasized storytelling through art, encouraging Ments to draw from their personal experiences to create pieces that were both authentic and impactful. Your art is your voice, Marcus told a group of Ments during one session. Don't let anyone tell you it's not valid. The world needs your perspective. Scholarships and financial support. The Ellis Arts Initiative also launched a scholarship program to help aspiring artists pursue education and training. Funded by proceeds from Marcus's own art sales and contributions from supportive collectors, the scholarships covered tuition, supplies, and travel for talented individuals who otherwise couldn't afford to advance their careers. This scholarship changed everything for me, said one of the first recipients, a young sculptor named Jasmine, during a gallery showcase. Marcus didn't just give me the tools, I found the confidence to believe in myself, because he believed in me first. Artist residencies and exhibitions. Marcus created residencies within Ellis Contemporary, offering artists dedicated studio space, access to gallery resources, and a platform to exhibit their work. Each residency concluded with a curated showcase, allowing participants to connect with collectors, critics, and the public. The gallery became known as a place where careers were launched, and artists found their voices. Through these programs, Ellis Contemporary quickly gained a reputation as a hub for talent and innovation. It wasn't just a gallery anymore, it was a movement. Marcus's vision of inclusion and equity began to ripple across the art world, inspiring other galleries and institutions to follow suit. Closure and forgiveness. Amid the flourishing success of the gallery, Marcus found himself reflecting on the past. Though he had achieved what many only dreamed of, there was one chapter of his journey that remained unresolved: Howard Livingston. Their last encounter at the reopening had been brief, but impactful. Howard's humiliation and regret were evident, but Marcus felt there was still something left to address. After much thought, Marcus decided to reach out, not for revenge or validation, but for closure. The meeting was arranged at Marcus's studio, a space filled with light, color, and the energy of ongoing creativity. When Howard arrived, he looked markedly different from the man Marcus had first met, older, quieter, and, it seemed, more introspective. He extended a hand to Marcus, who shook it firmly, but without hesitation. "Thank you for meeting with me," Howard said, his tone subdued. "I wanted to have this conversation for a long time," Marcus replied, gesturing for Howard to sit. "Not for me, but for us to move forward." For a moment, there was silence. Then Howard spoke, his voice tinged with remorse. "Marcus, I've had a lot of time to think about the way I treated you, and others. I was wrong. I let my own arrogance and prejudice blind me to your talent, your story, and your humanity. And for that, I'm deeply sorry." Marcus listened, his expression calm but thoughtful. "You didn't just dismiss my work, Howard. You dismissed me. And I know I wasn't the only one. Do you understand the impact of that?" Howard nodded, his eyes downcast. "I do now. Watching what you've done with the gallery, it's been humbling. You've shown me what I failed to see, that art is about connection, not exclusivity." Marcus leaned forward, his voice firm but compassionate. "I'm not here to dwell on the past, Howard. I'm here because I believe people can change. The question is, are you willing to use what you've learned to help others?" Howard looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "You'd give me that chance? After everything?" "I believe in redemption," Marcus said. "But it has to be earned. If you're serious, I'd like you to work with the Ellis Arts Initiative. You have knowledge and experience that could benefit the artists we're mentoring. Use it to make a difference." Howard's eyes filled with gratitude. "I'd be honored. And I won't let you down." The meeting ended with a handshake and a renewed sense of purpose. For Marcus, it wasn't about forgiving Howard for his sake, it was about ensuring that even those who had erred could contribute to the movement for change. A lasting impact. Marcus's decision to transform the gallery and create opportunities for others became a defining moment in the art world. Ellis Contemporary wasn't just a gallery, it was a symbol of resilience, progress, and inclusivity. The success of the Ellis Arts Initiative inspired similar programs across the country, with galleries and institutions adopting Marcus's model of mentorship and representation. Marcus's personal story became a beacon for others. Artists, especially those from marginalized communities, looked to him as proof that it was possible to overcome systemic barriers and achieve greatness without compromising authenticity. His speeches at art conferences and community events were always packed, his words resonating deeply with audiences. Art isn't just about beauty, Marcus often said. It's about truth. It's about telling stories that need to be heard and building bridges where there were once walls. As Marcus's influence grew, so did his commitment to giving back. He partnered with schools to bring art programs to underserved neighborhoods, ensuring that future generations would have the tools to express themselves and share their voices. His work was featured in museums and galleries worldwide, but he remained grounded, always returning to his roots. One of the most poignant moments of Marcus's journey came when Time magazine named him one of the most influential people of the year. In the accompanying article, Emily Carter wrote, "Marcus Ellis has not only redefined what it means to be an artist, he has redefined what it means to create change." His work reminds us that art has the power to heal, to inspire, and to transform. He is, without question, a force to be reckoned with. As Marcus stood on the stage at an awards ceremony accepting the honor, he looked out at the audience, a sea of faces, many of them artists he had mentored or inspired. His heart swelled with gratitude, not for the recognition, but for the journey that had brought him here. "This isn't about me," he said into the microphone. "It's about all of us. It's about every artist who has ever felt unseen, every story that has ever gone untold. Together, we're creating a world where art belongs to everyone." The applause was deafening, but Marcus's thoughts were already on the future. His legacy was not just the gallery or the art he had created, it was the movement he had started, one that would continue to grow and evolve long after he was gone.